Hi everyone, it is Heather with Rose Hill Paper Cottage, and today I'm sharing my process that I'm going through as I take this quilt and make it into a journal cover. So the first thing I want to do is I want to remove all these hand-tied pieces. The yarn is just, it's thick, and I just don't think it's going to work for my overall journal cover. It's going to make it too, lumpy. I am going to go for a soft cover, or I should say like semi-soft cover. There will be like a piece of cardstock, but I'll take you along on that journey. And I just hope that even if you don't have this kit or you're not currently working on, a quilt cover or anything, that you'll still find, inspiration and ideas. So the first thing here is just removing all of these, and I use a seam ripper and scissors both. The thread is quite bulky, and it's a little bit tough in some areas. And what happens here, because this thread, yarn is so thick, and this quilt has probably gone through tons and tons of washes, the holes left behind from them are, rather large, but that doesn't really bother me. There's ways to cover that up. You'll see as I go along too how I try to, kind of like make the threads go back in place. But the first thing is just, removing them all, and some of them are in there quite good. If these weren't, so bulky, I might have left them, but just the fact that they're so bulky, it's not an option. So you'll see here, I'm taking like the seam ripper, the edge of it, and then I'll also use like my fingernail to kind of try to, kind of push and manipulate those threads back, to go where they need to. If you use anything metal on it though, I mean, I highly recommend being cautious with it, because you can inadvertently tear into it, and you don't really want to do that. A lot of this material is very, worn. It's, must be quite old really, because some of it just tears so easily. But I'm a risk taker and I fly by the seat of my pants, and I don't mind, if there are, if I inadvertently slice it or anything like that, because I think it's fixable. It's all really still fixable, especially when you see the technique that I do. Another thing is you could try to wash it again after you've taken out all the yarn, if you don't want the holes to be there. But more than likely, it's not going to make them disappear. They're still going to be there because, they've been compromised. It's been too long that big bulky yarn's been in there. But, you could still have a go at it. And you don't even have to make a soft cover. This is just the direction I'm going. So I'm still working on this. A lot of times quilts have, batting, a batting layer in between them, and this doesn't. This just had a sheet, basically, that they have taken in between. So that's why I completely took it apart. If it had a batting layer and, maybe it was machine done or something, I would have left it. But, when you're making covers and you're working with, materials, that kind of determines a lot of the process that you go through. So this is just my prep of what I would do with this type of material. So I'm just getting more yarn out from the corner. It was really wedged in there in the seam. And the piece I'm using there, it has a lot of wear on it. It's got a stain on it. But I'll show you how I kind of remedy that. I did try to wash it to get that stain out, but I did not. I was not successful. And there's all different types of fabrics that have been used on it as well, They're not all just cottons. So the next thing I'm showing is I am going to use a file folder. So if you purchase the kit, it came in a file folder and you can use that if you choose to kind of do this method. The file folder that I had was not quite tall enough. So that line at the top is just, I stitched another piece of the file folder to make it longer, basically, or, taller. You may not, have a journal that's going to be this size. You may make a couple smaller ones. I'm just kind of, showing what I did. So I needed to make that file folder a little bit bigger. And then I'm showing you how it would look, if you are going to, have the nice seams, you could fold it over the cardstock there or the file folder and then stitch it in place before you put your front on. You can also add like a layer of batting. And at this stage, I didn't know if I was going to use any batting or not. I really wanted that shabby feel. So I also will put, layers of fabric in between. But this is another option too. If you want kind of more padding on the, next to your quilt, you would do the the felt there. And then do your cardstock, glue it down to there, and then you could, stitch all around it and everything like that. And then you have like kind of a more soft, cover. So I'll still use, that piece that was the back piece and then the sheet that was in between. And then you can see here, I have several more layers of material, just because I'm really going for that, threads kind of hanging off the edges, like the unfinished raw edge on my journal cover. So you could do different things, whether you want a nice finish or more of a shabby finish like what I'm going for. So I'm kind of showing what it might look like, to have kind of the layers, sticking out and what that would look like. It's kind of hard to tell. And because that fabric is so, such a strong, dark print, I don't want it to show through my inside fabric that I'm going to use. So I'll have to do my layering, like a little bit differently. So one option is to turn it around this direction. Another option would be to, put cardstock right underneath, my print. Another option would be to put a piece of fabric underneath my fabric and then the cardstock piece. So sometimes you just have to play around with, whatever it is that, you're working with. And actually for this is going to be my inside piece, and I'm going to actually use the reverse side. It's a little bit more pastel and not so vibrant, and that's kind of the look I'm going for on the inside. Another thing is that because this quilt was completely hand stitched, I just feel like I want to pay respects, to that and show that hand stitching. So my idea is that on the back pocket, like maybe a side pocket, I'll have the stitching kind of showing for part of that pocket, have it facing upward. So I'm just kind of playing around with some of the different, fabrics. And, you could also look in your own stash. Obviously, you'll have, depending on how much of the quilt you'll use, you'll have pieces left over. I had, 3 squares with obviously 2 of my squares being, 9 different pieces in each square. So there was a lot to kind of like play around with. And then on the front part, I wanted there to just be like a double pocket. And so I was kind of like looking at options for doing a double pocket. So I was going to do a long side pocket on the back and then a double pocket on the front. And I'm just kind of like looking at different materials, seeing what I like, what I think I should, choose. And it's kind of hard to see these prints because that, main fabric on the back is kind of washing out, all of the colors. So I really like these two fabrics together, and this is actually what I'll end up, picking, is that I really, really love them together. One is like a small floral. The other one is the larger. The greens don't match, which I love. And so I'll just, I'll end up, using both of those. And then back on the back, I was kind of playing around with that fabric, seeing what I think there. So now here is what I believe to be my finished cover. So a couple things here. I have a front and a back, which you'll see. And so I stitch everything that I'm going to stitch down onto the front, however I want it to be. I do that first before I stitch the two pieces together. So it'll make more sense here. So what I'm showing right now is the pieces that I actually cut off. And I think they went this direction, but you get the idea that I basically took off the top 3 squares. I took all of those off, and then I worked with the lower 6. And that's the size of my journal. I trim a little bit, on it, but that's basically the size of this journal. So it's a really decent size, journal. And then I also decided that there just needed to be some different, texture on here. And so one of the things I did was this peach colored, block was really pretty, but I just felt like it could just, it just kind of was a little bit blah. So what I did was I just took this lace that I have and I just, put it on the top. And that's a great way to camouflage any imperfection, is to find a lace and cover it up. So that peach square in the middle, it had a larger hole that I just couldn't get rid of. That lace totally hides it, totally takes care of it. And the chenille I put over there on the bottom, I just wanted to, bring in the chenille both on the front and the back cover. And you'll see there that I did lace again where I'm pointing. And then here's some of my hand stitching. I put 3 X's there. And then I also did like a running stitch in like a off-white, color there. And I just did some patchwork. I just think it's really super duper cute. I just love how it all turned out. And it's, it's got some holes in it and stuff. And that's what I love. I love that. I think that's just super adorable. So right now I just have like other layers behind it pinned in. So you can kind of see, some of my layering there. And then I actually cut a couple more like bed sheets. So that's the chenille there. And I put a little patchwork like rose from other fabric that I had. I just put it, I don't know, it just kind of like worked. I came across it in my stash because I looked through everything and I really liked it. And then I put this lace trim piece at the bottom because I just felt like it needed like a little border. And this lace is from A Tattered Dream, Denise's shop. So I'll try to remember to link that below. And then I've basically created like a cute little pocket there. So isn't that adorable? I just love it. I think it's so cute how it turned out there. So just some ideas. I mean, you don't have to put a pocket on the front at all. But, you could put a pocket on the top, on the side, on the bottom, whatever you want to do. So I'm just kind of showing more of the layers there. I've got quite a few. So that's the inside of the quilt. That's the back piece of the quilt. And then I have incorporated like a couple of, like old, sheets and then a couple other, white pieces. And at this point, I don't really know, like when I go to do it, I don't really know how many layers I'm going to need until I get it all, together. So now I'm going to show you the inside piece. So I created that double pocket on the front and the side pocket. And, remember I turned that fabric inside out. It doesn't look it, but it actually is inside out. It's, the more bold pattern is, underneath. But I just felt like it worked with the colors that were there, that's what it needed. And you can see I've stitched onto the file folder. And I've got some layers behind it. And I've basically just, I sewed that, pretty taut. I mean, you can see how taut that fabric, really is. And then I did a little bit of patchwork. Just taken from different pieces and a little piece of the chenille, and I did a little bit of patchwork there. And this is my double pocket. So in between the fabric there, I have put a little piece of, file folder in it. So that's a pocket there, and then the pocket there. And it'll all eventually be stitched down so that it's all secure. So I did a little bit more hand stitching inside. So I did, some colonial knots, and I did a little running stitch and some more colonial knots on the back and some X's. I just thought, it just really, I just wanted to really just pay respect, that had all been hand stitched, this quilt, that was lovingly created. And I just thought that I should do a little bit of hand stitching in it. So I may have to trim a little bit off the side. I never really know until I get both pieces, together. But I figure it out as I go along and as I stitch it. And I stitch that piece all the way through those layers, the file folder. So if you don't use all those layers, you may need a little bit of batting, which is what I'm showing here. And I would, you don't need the batting to show out the edges if you're going to do like a shabby edge. I won't end up using the felt. I won't need it because I put so much fabric in between, on both of them. So it's going to be cushy enough for me. But so obviously you can see how thick that is. But if you don't use all those different fabrics, then you may need, so you just go on feel, see what it feels like, for your project. Because sometimes you just don't know. You don't know until you try it all out and you see, is it going to work? Is it too much? And I just felt like it was too thick with that extra felt in there. So I feel like all those layers are enough for me. And honestly, I mean, you do not have to do, all these layers. This is just the look I'm going for. And I will actually glue that all in place. So I will glue, I'll put glue on the back of the file folder and I'll glue it to the fabric. So it's still bendy, I'm showing you, with the one piece of felt. But for my project, it's still too thick because I have probably, let's see, I'm trying to think, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I might have 8 layers of fabric total in there. So here I've stitched it all around and oh my gosh, this turned out so cute. So I had to do a little bit of trimming, here and there, which is normal to have to do. Especially when you're doing kind of like a shabby, type piece. So I'm just talking about how I didn't use the felt. I didn't need it. It was thick enough with all those layers that I had. And oh my gosh, I'm just in love with it. I just think it's so adorable. It's just so cute. And I did several stitches around. So because I stitched my back and I stitched the front and then I also stitch them together. And I just kind of do some crazy stitching because that's the direction I'm going. And if you are new to sewing, this is a perfect way to finish an edge because you don't have to worry about it being perfect. It doesn't need to be perfect. You can just, sew around. And I've even had to do that, when I've done a really nice, stitch around and then maybe my second one was kind of wonky. And so I'm like, well, let's just do a third, why not? Because, it's okay. These are junk journals. They're supposed to be, fun, and imperfection is a thing of beauty. It really is. So I did so many different crazy layers in there, but I just think it's so cool. I love it. I really love it. And I don't know that I've ever done this many layers of stitching around, a journal before, but here we are trying new things. And then it just folds in half and there we go. And it's a nice weight to it already. It's still flexible. It's really, really nice. I really, really love it. So I think it turned out really, really good. So the next video will show, like my papers and the whole thing finished, and how I went that direction. So anyway, I hope you guys got some ideas, and I'll see you in the next video.